This is Brian Fuder with Square Foot Gardening for the Red River Valley, and today I'd like to visit with you a little bit about your soil. Let's talk about why soil is important. First of all, let's make a distinction between soil and dirt. They're not the same thing. Soil is teeming with nutrients. It's biological, it's living, it's an organism. It's got a lot of good things in it. It's got the materials that we need to have good plant growth. Dirt, on the other hand, that's what you drag in on your shoes in the kitchen after you've been out in the garden digging. That's dirt. What is soil? If you think about a typical phase model for soil, there's three components: the solids, the water, and the air. Our solids in this case are going to be our sands, our silts, our clays, and our organic material. We need those all to work in conjunction with each other to help support the soil structure and working together to make sure that we've got a soil that's going to transport nutrients and moisture as we need it to feed the plants that we have growing in our garden. The other two things are then water and air. And so our solids make up roughly about 50 to 60% of our soil mass. The other 40 to 50% is made up of the water and the air. Those percentages are going to vary based on the moisture content of your soil. So talking about the physical properties of soil. Number one, some of the desired physical properties of our soil is we want the soil to be uncompacted. We want it to be able to support a root system, to allow for drainage, to allow for air to flow. And that's very important. We have to have that permeability, or that ability for water to flow, both for absorption of water and for the eventual drainage of water. And so those are the main physical properties that we look at when we're talking about soils. Then we talk a little bit about the chemical properties that we want in our soils. Number one is probably our pH. We want our pH to be slightly acidic to neutral, so somewhere between 6 and 7.5. Purified water has a pH of 7, which is neutral. pH scales on a scale of 1 to 14, with 7 being the neutral side of it. And so we want our soil to be a little bit acidic, or less than 7. If we have an idea of what our soil pH is, we can make adjustments to that if we need to, but we're going to have that soil tested to determine that pH. And we'll talk a little bit about that more here in a while. If we have soil that's too acidic, one of the things that we can do to adjust that is add some lime. The liming process, or the addition of limestone to the soil, will help adjust that pH. And if we've got a soil that's too alkaline, we can add some sulfur to it. That'll adjust those pH levels at that point too. Now, depending on what type of plant you're growing, if you want to try to grow some specialty plants like azaleas, for instance, those require some different pH levels than what your basic garden does. And so if you're going to be planting something like that, contain those areas so that you can make those adjustments to your pH without damaging the surrounding crops that you're trying to grow with it. Varying pH levels like that are probably best held to container gardens. What about the life in our soil? There is so much life going on in that soil. We can't see it. It's microscopic. Microorganisms are in there. They're working through, they're processing the organic materials that are found in the soil, and they're turning them into nutrients. Basically, our soil supports structures that help support underground the microorganisms that are producing the nutrients that are being made available to our plants for uptake. Our soil also, with the microorganisms and those things in there, helps to provide for some drainage. They create voids within the soil as organic material decomposes, it rots away, it decays away, and eventually it leaves small voids. There, again, you can hold air or water in voids. And of course, we want to try to leave our soil as undisturbed as we possibly can, so that we maintain that healthy life that's been developed in our soils. And one of the things that we can do to disturb that beneficial life in our soils is to actually overdig or overtill our soils. So the organic materials that go into our soil, the food that feed the microorganisms that create the nutrients, that feed the plants, that help the plants grow to maturity, The plants then die, and they become the feed that feeds the organisms that create the nutrients that feed the plants. The cycle. We need to continue that. If we think about the process, the death and then decay, organic materials through that process are deposited in our soil. Composting is the process of decay. It improves our soil structure, stimulates growth and continuation of those microorganisms within our soil. It adds the ability to transport our soil moistures, also the ability to retain and distribute nutrients as they're needed. Good composting also balances out our mineral deficiencies. It can even balance out some of our pH issues that we have. So where do we get this decomposed material from? It happens naturally. Mother Nature does a really good job of taking care of that herself. There's some things that we can do to assist her a little bit. We can add composted material or decayed materials into our gardens. And one of the biggest things that we have available to us is yard waste. Leaves in the fall of the year put into the garden and slightly dug in work amazing as an organic material. Grass clippings. We can capture our grass as we're mowing all summer long, place that in your gardens or into a composting bin. That works great too. There are a lot of communities and cities that have curbside pickup grass clippings. They take those to a central composting site and go out and get compost from these facilities. And got organic material in it too. One of the things that I get a little bit cautious about when I'm thinking about using community supported compost, if you think about who are the people that are bagging their grass, putting it on the curb and having it hauled away, they're probably very particular in their lawn care. They're probably more prone to use of synthetic fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides. Does the composting process remove all of those chemicals from that soil? Not necessarily, but I guess it's up to you. If you want to take a chance incorporating additional synthetic pesticides and fertilizers into your food chain, it's your decision. I'm not going to say one way or another. If you use your grass clippings, you know what's going on your lawn. So our grass clippings, our leaves, healthy plant waste. If you got fall of the year, as you're harvesting out your garden, you're pulling the flowers after they froze. If they were healthy before they went dormant, they're good material to put in your compost bin. Kitchen scrap. If you're gathering kitchen scrap for a small compost bin in your kitchen, use that. Your vegetable peeling, eggshells, coffee grounds work really good. Tea bags, those types of things. That's all stuff that can be composted in your garden. One of the things that I would recommend that you maybe stray away from is the introduction of proteins into your compost. Not that proteins don't decay. They do. But when they decay, there's usually a pretty nasty smell that goes along with it. And if you've got that going out in the garden, you may be attracting some critters that you may necessarily not want to attract into your garden. Mulching. One of the first things that happens if we have bare soil, it's really subject to a high degree of the loss of that compost or humus. Humus is another word that you hear used for composted material. So if we have a cover of organic material to protect our soil, to keep that sun and the environment pulling out that nutrient that we've just put in there, the better off we are. Use some wood chips, use your grass clippings, cover that material up. Cardboard works, newspaper works. Depending on what you do, not only is it going to help retain moisture in your soil, it's going to help detract weeds from growing. Depending on what you're using, it looks nice too. Earthworms. Earthworms, these are kind of the highway builders in the soil. They develop the highways so that the roots can expand, so that drainage can occur. Nutrient transport can happen. Earthworms are really essential for a healthy soil, and the best way to preserve earthworms and their civilization, if we want to call it that, is don't disturb them. Avoid that deep tilling or deep spading on a regular basis. You think every spring we go out and we till the garden deep. Every fall we go back and we till the garden deep, or we spade it over, we double dig it. Those types of things, we're disturbing that highway system that those worms and those other organisms worked so hard to create over the time that they've had. If we make it too tough for them, they're going to find someplace else to live. And we want them in our garden, not somewhere else. And so if we can minimize that tilling, that deep digging, if you feel the need to get in there and bust things up, how about just the use of a broad fork? Just basically stabbing long tines into the soil, rocking the soil back and forth just to open up some airways, just to loosen it. It doesn't completely destroy the substructure of the soil. Take care when you're treating problems in your garden. One of the things that probably detracts earthworms the most that I've seen is the use of diatomaceous earth. And that's kind of like a real sharp sand. Yeah, it's great for deterring slugs and things like that, but also it'll chase away some of your beneficials that you want too. Careful with the use of pesticides, herbicides, even some fertilizers, the synthetic ones. This can not only have an effect on the health of the organisms, a lot of these things are non-selective, and so it's going to kill whatever it can kill, and it's not really concerned about checking IDs or anything like that to see if it's a good bug or a bad bug. And we also want to make sure that we try to eliminate any excessive variance in our pH levels if we can help that. So keep an eye on those pH levels. I would say test them annually at a minimum. Some other tips and advice that I want to give you as far as soil in your garden. Number one, I know it's spring. We got the itch. We've been in the house since October. We want to get outside. We want to feel that oneness with nature again, but don't start digging too soon. If you get to digging too soon, the soil temperature obviously isn't going to be warm enough to support germination of the seeds you're planting, number one. Number two, it's wet. And if you start digging, and especially in a high clay soil, when it's too wet, you're going to have clay clods develop. And those big clods, those hardened clumps of clay that you have in your garden, especially up here in the Red River Valley where we have a high degree of clay, those clay clods aren't going to go away over the summer. It generally takes a couple of freeze-thaw cycles that only a winter can provide to remove them. So if you dig too early, you know you're going to have clay clods, and you're going to deal with them all summer long. So don't get in there, dig too soon. One of the things that you can check to see if your soil is dry enough to proceed with going to dig, grab a handful of it. Squeeze it in your hand. If it holds that cast, it's probably too wet to dig. It should freely crumble, and at that point, you're in good shape to go. But check down a little bit deeper, too. If you're going to dig a little deeper than just scratching the top surface to plant some seeds, if you're going to dig any deeper, make sure you check that soil moisture level a little bit further down to the depth that you're looking to till. Avoid synthetic fertilizers and pesticides if you can. I know there are times when we just have to rely on them, and so we do rely on them. That's fine. Just don't make it your first choice or your first go-to option for curing a problem. Try some of the organic ways first if you can. Don't overwater. You can drown plants out. A lot of house plants die because we overlove them. We give them too much water and we drown them out. They don't stand in water, but the soil is plugged. They have to have that root structure underneath those plants has to have the ability to breathe, that air movement through there. So don't overwater. If we fill those voids with water, there's no room for air for breathing. Organic material. Always be adding organic material to your garden. It's the nutrients that's going to make life grow around for you. If you feel you need to dig your garden deep, like I said, consider the use of a broad fork instead of deep tilling or plowing or deep spading. It maintains that structure underground. Have your soil tested. pH levels, nutrient levels, mineral deficiencies, all of those can be identified through a soil test. There are some home soil test kits available at your big box stores or your gardening centers that'll give you a good indication of that. Or contact your county extension agent and see if there's a soil testing program that you can participate in there too. Plant a cover crop in the fall of the year as you're waiting for the season to wrap up. Getting something green started in the fall to have it incorporated into your garden next spring. Again, that's organic material. That's going to help that garden remain healthy, and that soil is going to be beneficial to the plants that you're putting in there. Another thing too, let the kids play in the garden. A little dirt never killed one. My grandmother said every child should eat a peck of dirt before they start kindergarten. And there's probably some truth to that. And you know what? You adults too. Doesn't hurt to get dirty. Keeping those things important, understanding that soil is vital. Good gardening, prosperous gardening, understanding soil and the complexities of soil, it's really not that hard. It's actually kind of simple. But most importantly, keep those fingers dirty. Enjoy your garden.